I just spent 4 months and way too much money playing every story-driven game on PS5 to answer one question: which ones actually have writing good enough to justify $70? Because right now, the gaming industry is in this weird place where every AAA release promises emotional storytelling and choices that matter, and then you play it and realize the emotional storytelling is just a guy yelling about his dead wife for 6 hours, and the choices are be nice, or be slightly mean but still nice. So I made a rule: I'd only keep games where the story wasn't just good for a video game, it had to be good, period. Stories that would hold up as prestige TV, as novels, as actual art. Stories where I forgot I was holding a controller because I was too invested in what happened next. 20 games made the cut. Some will wreck you emotionally, some will make you question your morality, some just tell the best adventure you've experienced in years. Let's go. Guardians of the Galaxy is Eidos-Montreal making the most underrated story-driven game of the generation, and it's a tragedy that people slept on this. You're Star-Lord, leading the Guardians through a galaxy-threatening crisis, and the game nails the team dynamic. Rocket is abrasive but loyal, Drax is literal-minded and grieving, Gamora is competent but burdened by her past, Groot is Groot, and the banter is perfect. It's Marvel quips done right, where the humor enhances the character relationships instead of undercutting emotional moments. The story is surprisingly heartfelt. This isn't MCU fan service. This is an original story about found family and facing past trauma. Every Guardian has a chapter dedicated to their backstory, and the game explores grief, guilt, and redemption with genuine depth. There's a moment involving Drax and his daughter that wrecked me. The combat is chaotic but fun. You're commanding the team in real time, calling out targets, combining abilities, and it feels like you're conducting a squad of misfits. The enemy variety keeps it fresh, and the boss fights are spectacle. The music is incredible. The licensed soundtrack is full of 80s bangers, and they're integrated into gameplay. There's a segment where you boost morale by choosing which song to play, and it affects the team's performance. This game flopped commercially because people assumed it was live service garbage like Avengers. It's not. It's a tight 15-hour single-player adventure with heart, and it deserves way more recognition. You feel like you're starring in the best Guardian story Marvel never made, and it's absolutely worth full price. The Witcher 3 on PS5 is CD Projekt Red, proving that old games can feel new again, and this is still one of the best RPGs ever made. You're Geralt of Rivia, a monster hunter searching for his adopted daughter across a war-torn fantasy world. The main story is epic: ancient elves, interdimensional travel, prophecy, but the real magic is in how the world feels lived in. NPCs have problems that don't revolve around you. Villages are affected by war in tangible ways. Side quests are better than most games' main plots. There's a questline about a haunted tower where you uncover a love story spanning decades. There's a contract for a lesson in the woods that becomes a moral dilemma about tradition versus progress. And the Bloody Baron questline is still one of the best written narratives in gaming. It deals with abuse, addiction, and consequences without easy answers. The PS5 version adds ray tracing, 60 frames per second, and faster loading. The visual upgrade is significant. The lighting is dramatically improved, but more importantly, the DLC is included. Hearts of Stone is a 10-hour expansion with one of the best villains in RPG history. Blood and Wine adds an entire new region the size of some full games. The combat is still divisive. It's not Souls-like, it's about preparation and potion use. But once it clicks, it's satisfying. You're researching monster weaknesses, crafting oils, setting traps, then executing contracts. You feel like you're playing through a fantasy epic that respects your intelligence, and the complete edition is the definitive way to experience. Persona 5 Royal is Atlas taking one of the best JRPGs ever made and adding 30 more hours of content that somehow makes it even better. You're a high school student in Tokyo who gains the power to enter people's minds and steal their corrupted desires. By day, you're managing relationships and improving stats. By night, you're infiltrating palaces, surreal dungeons representing twisted psyches, and fighting shadows in turn-based combat. The dual life sim and dungeon crawler loop is addictive. The story is about rebellion rebellion and societal corruption. You're targeting abusers of power, a predatory teacher, a mob boss, a corrupt politician, and forcing them to confess their crimes. The social commentary is sharp. Each palace represents a different societal ill, and the game doesn't pull punches. The cast is incredible. Every phantom thief has a full arc. Ryuji is dealing with abuse and finding self-worth. Anne is reclaiming agency after exploitation. Makoto is breaking free from expectations, and the confidant system lets you form deep relationships with dozens of characters across Tokyo. The art direction is chef's kiss. The menus, the UI, the animations, everything oozes style, and the music is iconic. Last Surprise alone is worth the price of admission. Royal adds an entire third semester with a new character, new story content, and an ending that reframes the entire game. It's essential content that elevates an already masterpiece. You feel like you're living in Tokyo as a stylish phantom thief, and 120 hours disappears before you realize it. Resident Evil Village is Capcom taking the best parts of RE4 and RE7, blending them and adding Lady Dimitrescu to break the internet. The base game is that perfect Resident Evil mix of horror and camp. You're Ethan Winters searching for your daughter in a European village filled with werewolves, vampires, and a 9-foot-tall lady who spawned 1,000 memes. The game knows it's ridiculous and leans into it. Lady Dimitrescu's castle is gothic horror. The Beneviento house is psychological terror with zero combat and is the scariest section. Heisenberg's factory is heavy metal chaos. It's 4 different horror games in one. The combat feels great. You're managing resources, upgrading weapons through a merchant who's somehow in every location, and fighting bosses that require strategy. There's a boss called Sturm, a propeller engine monster that chases you through tight corridors, and it's pure panic. The story is bonkers. There are mold zombies, sentient fungus, Chris Redfield doing morally questionable things, and a final act that goes full action spectacle. It shouldn't work, but it absolutely does. The Shadows of Rose DLC is a return to pure survival horror. You're playing as Ethan's daughter 16 years later, navigating a nightmare realm with limited resources. It's RE7 meets Silent Hill, and it's fantastic. You feel like you're in a horror movie that you can actually survive, and the gold edition is worth full price for the complete package. A Plague Tale. Requiem is a Sobo studio making a stealth game about a sister protecting her plague-infected brother, and it's one of the most emotionally affecting games in years. You're Amisha, guiding your younger brother Hugo through a medieval world overrun by rats and the Inquisition. Hugo has a blood disease connected to the rat plague, and the entire game is about Amisha trying to save him while watching him slowly lose himself. The sibling bond is the core, and it's written with heartbreaking authenticity. The gameplay is stealth with light puzzles. You're using light sources to navigate through swarms of rats that devour anything in darkness. There's a sequence in a city being consumed by rats where you're using a sling to light torches and create safe paths, and the tension is suffocating, and there are moments where Hugo loses control and the rats become a weapon, and the game makes you feel the horror of that power. The visuals are stunning. You're exploring southern France, coastal towns, lavender fields, ancient ruins, and the environments are photorealistic. There's a chapter in a war-torn city that's one of the most visually impressive sequences in gaming. The ending is brutal, I won't spoil it, but the game doesn't flinch from the consequences of its premise, and it left me emotionally wrecked. You feel like you're playing through a dark fairy tale where the stakes are deeply personal and the journey is unforgettable. Detroit. Become Human is Quantic Dream making a choose-your-own-adventure game about androids gaining consciousness, and it's the most reactive narrative game ever made. You play as 3 androids: Connor, a detective hunting deviant androids; Kara, a housekeeper protecting a child; and Marcus, a caretaker who becomes a revolutionary leader. Every choice matters. Characters can die permanently in Chapter 2, and the story continues without them. There are branching paths so divergent that 2 players can have completely different experiences. The flowcharts at the end of each chapter show you how your choices compared to other players, and seeing alternate paths is addictive. There's a sequence where Marcus can lead a peaceful protest or a violent revolution, and both paths are fully realized with different consequences. There's a moment where Connor can choose to become deviant or stay a machine, and it fundamentally changes the final act. The performances are mocap and they're incredible. Brian Dechart as Connor, Valerie Curry as Kara, Jesse Williams as Marcus. They sell the emotional beats. There's a scene between Connor and Hank at a rooftop that's one of the best acted moments in gaming. The themes are heavy-handed. This is a civil rights allegory, but it's executed with enough nuance that it works. The game asks genuine questions about consciousness, freedom, and what makes us human. You feel like you're directing your own sci-fi thriller, and the replayability is absurd. Death Stranding is Kojima doing Kojima things at maximum volume, and if you hated the first version, this won't change your mind. But if you understood what he was cooking, this is him perfecting it. You're still a delivery man walking across post-apocalyptic America, but the game is a meditation on connection and isolation, and the walking is the point. You're building infrastructure, roads, bridges, zip lines, and leaving supplies for other players. The game makes you feel the weight of every package, every step, every decision. There's a sequence delivering medicine through a snowstorm where your boots are degrading and you're rationing stamina, and it's the most tense a walking simulator has ever been. The story is pure Kojima insanity, 5-hour cutscenes, celebrity cameos, a subplot about AI consciousness that's both pretentious and affecting, and the music. When you crest a hill after a brutal trek and the low roar track kicks in, it's transcendent. The director's cut adds combat arenas, racing missions, and a firing range, but the core experience is unchanged. This is a game about rebuilding society one delivery at a time, and it's unlike anything else. You feel like you're playing interactive art that somehow also has stealth and boss fights, and it's worth full price because there's no substitute. Like a Dragon, Infinite Wealth is RGG Studio making the biggest, most ambitious entry in the Yakuza series, and it's a beautiful mess of crime drama, comedy, and heart. Ichiban goes to Hawaii to find his mother, and the game becomes this mix of gangster story, life sim, and turn-based RPG where you beat people with bicycles. But the genius is that it's also about Kiryu, the series protagonist for 20 years, dealing with cancer and trying to make peace with his past. The game bounces between Ichiban's optimistic chaos and Kiryu's melancholic reflection, and both stories are equally compelling. The emotional beats hit hard. There's a scene where Kiryu is going through a bucket list of people to say goodbye to, and it's a tour through the entire series history. If you've played these games for years, it's devastating, and Ichiban's relationship with his mother explores abandonment and forgiveness with surprising maturity. But then you're also playing a Pokemon-style collecting game called Sujimon, managing a resort island, racing go-karts, singing karaoke, and fighting bosses on sinking yachts. The tonal whiplash shouldn't work, but it does because the series has always been about finding joy and meaning in everyday life alongside the drama. The turn-based combat is hype. You're using the environment as weapons, combining party member abilities, and every fight is over-the-top spectacle. There are 80+ sub-stories, and some of them are better than most games' main plots. You feel like you're living a second life in Hawaii, where occasionally you beat up Yakuza, and it's one of the most content-dense games on PS5. Disco Elysium is ZA/UM, making an RPG with zero combat where you play as a detective having an existential crisis, and it's one of the best written games ever made. You're a cop who woke up with complete amnesia after a multi-day bender, and you're supposed to be investigating a murder, but the real investigation is into yourself, your past, your failures, your political beliefs, your identity. The game is fully voice acted now, and the performances are incredible. Your own thoughts talk to you as distinct characters. Your ancient reptilian brain wants you to give in to impulses. Your inland empire makes surreal connections. Your electrochemistry wants drugs. The writing is literary. This isn't game dialogue. This is prose that would work in a novel. The political commentary is sharp and nuanced. You can be a fascist, a communist, a centrist, or apolitical, and the game explores each ideology with depth and critique. There's a conversation with a woman about the nature of reality that's more philosophically dense than most actual philosophy. There's no combat. All conflict is resolved through dialogue and skill checks. You're interviewing witnesses, piecing together clues, making choices that define who your character becomes. And the mystery is genuinely compelling. The murder is just the surface, and underneath is a story about labor movements, class struggle, and human connection. The ending offers no easy answers. You solve the case, but you don't necessarily solve yourself. It's ambiguous and profound and stays with you. You feel like you're reading the best detective novel ever written, except you're making the choices. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is Square Enix taking the most beloved RPG ever made and saying we're going to expand every moment into something bigger. This is the second part of the FF4 remake trilogy, and it covers the middle section of the original game, leaving Midgar and exploring the wider world. But this isn't a shot-for-shot remake. This is a reimagining that adds hours of new content, changes story beats, and asks philosophical questions about fate and free will. The party dynamics are the heart of this. Cloud, Tifa, Aerith, Barrett, Red 13, every character gets meaningful development. There are entire chapters dedicated to character relationships. There's a gold saucer date sequence that's fully playable and changes based on your choices. There's a moment involving Aerith that every fan knows is coming, and the game handles it with devastating emotional weight while also subverting expectations. The combat is expanded from Remake. You're switching between party members in real time, combining abilities and exploiting enemy weaknesses. Boss fights are spectacle. There's a fight against a weapon that's a 20-minute multi-phase epic, and the synergy attacks between characters are visually stunning. The open world is huge. You're exploring plains, mountains, coastal towns, each region packed with side content. And unlike most open worlds, the side quests are meaningful. They build relationships, reveal lore, and tie into the main narrative. You feel like you're experiencing a classic story with modern depth, and if you grew up with FF7, this hits different. Marvel's Spider-Man 2 is Insomniac taking everything people loved about the first two games, doubling it, then adding a symbiote suit that fundamentally changes the story. You're playing as both Peter and Miles, and the game switches between them seamlessly. Peter gets the symbiote suit, and it's not just a power-up, it's corrupting him. He's more aggressive, more violent, and the game makes you feel that shift through gameplay. The symbiote abilities are powerful, but brutal, and using them feels wrong in the right way. The story is about responsibility and identity. Peter is struggling with the symbiote's influence while dealing with personal loss. Miles is trying to figure out who he is as Spider-Man without living in Peter's shadow. And when their stories collide in the third act, it's genuinely emotional. The set pieces are absurd. There's a chase through a burning building as Peter where the DualSense makes you feel the structure collapsing. There's a sequence where you play as Venom, actually controlling the symbiote, and it's one of those rare moments where a game lets you be the monster guilt-free, and the final confrontation ties together themes from all three games. The world feels alive. You're swinging through Manhattan, Queens, and Brooklyn with no loading screens, and the city is dense with activity, random crimes, side missions, collectibles. It's the kind of open world that rewards exploration. You feel like you're living inside the best Spider-Man story never told in film, and Insomniac nails the landing. Ghost of Tsushima is Sucker Punch, making the samurai game we've always wanted, and the story is a surprisingly mature meditation on honor versus survival. You're Jin Sakai, a samurai during the first Mongol invasion of Japan, and the core conflict is simple but powerful. Do you fight with honor and watch your people die, or do you abandon the samurai code to become something else? Something effective but dishonorable. The game calls this becoming the ghost, and it's not presented as purely heroic. NPCs fear you, your allies question you, your mentor calls you a traitor. The story is structured like a classic samurai film. There are standoffs where you face enemies one-on-one in duels. There are moments of quiet beauty, walking through fields of pampas grass before battle, writing haiku at scenic overlooks. And there are moments of brutal violence where you're using poison and fear tactics that samurai would consider cowardly. The side tales are excellent. There's a quest line about Masako, a warrior avenging her murdered family. That's a full revenge thriller. There's Norio, a warrior monk struggling with his faith during war, and Yuna, a thief who becomes Jin's closest ally, challenges his worldview constantly. The Iki Island expansion adds a whole new region and explores Jin's childhood trauma. It's darker and more personal than the main game, and it deepens Jin's character in ways that feel essential. You feel like you're starring in a Kurosawa film where you control the outcome, and the director's cut is the definitive version. Horizon Forbidden West is Guerrilla Games making a sequel that improves on everything, and while robot dinosaurs are the hook, the story is surprisingly ambitious sci-fi. You're Aloy, hunting across post-apocalyptic California and Nevada, trying to figure out why a plague is killing all plant life. The mystery unravels over 30 hours into a story about AI singularity, interstellar colonization, and whether humanity deserves a second chance. It's heady science fiction wrapped in an action game about fighting robot dinosaurs with a bow. The story gets wild. Without spoiling it, this game deals with artificial intelligence gone rogue, extinct species revival, and the ethics of playing God. There's a late game reveal that recontextualizes the entire first game, and Aloy's arc is about learning she can't save the world alone. She needs to trust people and build a team, which sounds simple but is executed with genuine character growth. The side quests are legitimately good. There's a quest line about a tribe dealing with extinction that's more thoughtful than most games' main stories. There's a subplot about salvagers uncovering old world tech that explores how societies mythologize the past. And the world itself is stunning. You're exploring overgrown ruins of San Francisco, underwater research facilities, desert mesas with ancient bunkers. The environmental storytelling is incredible. You piece together what happened to the old world through ruins and holograms, and it's genuinely affecting. You feel like you're uncovering a mystery that spans centuries, and the payoff justifies the journey. Alan Wake 2 is Remedy making the weirdest AAA game in years, and it's a masterclass in meta-narrative storytelling. This is survival horror wrapped in a commentary about storytelling itself. You play as two characters, Saga Anderson, an FBI agent investigating ritual murders in the Pacific Northwest, and Alan Wake, a writer trapped in a nightmare dimension trying to write his way out. The game switches between them, and their stories intersect in ways that break your brain. Saga uses a mind place where she pieces together clues on a literal mind map. Alan uses a writer's room where he rewrites reality by changing plot elements on a storyboard. Both mechanics aren't just systems, they're thematic explorations of how we construct narratives and bend reality to fit them. The horror is oppressive. You're in the woods at night with limited ammo, and enemies phase in and out of shadows. But then the game does something insane. There are live action segments, in-universe TV shows you can watch, and a chapter where you navigate a surreal talk show set being attacked by monsters. It's shot like an actual David Lynch film. The story is about the power of stories to shape reality. Alan is trapped in a loop, writing the same narrative over and over. Saga is investigating murders connected to his writing, and the game blurs fiction and reality until you're not sure what's real anymore. You feel like you're inside someone's fever dream where every frame is intentional, and if you like your horror weird and your narrative's dense, this is essential. Final Fantasy XVI is Square Enix making a dark fantasy epic that feels more like Game of Thrones than traditional Final Fantasy, and it's the best story the series has told in 20 years. This is not turn-based combat. This is not anime teens saving the world with friendship. This is a mature political drama about war, slavery, and gods called icons who level cities when they fight. You're Clive Rosfield, a man who lost everything on a revenge quest that becomes something bigger. A fight to free humanity from a magical plague and cycles of oppression. The icon battles are spectacle on a scale gaming rarely attempts. There's a fight against Titan where you're riding Garuda through a canyon while Titan throws mountains at you. There's a fight against Bahamut that takes place in orbit above the planet. These are 15-minute set pieces that blend gameplay and cinematics into something that feels like controlling a kaiju film, but the quieter moments are what make this special. There's a subplot about bearers, magic users who are enslaved and branded, and it's not subtle about real-world parallels. There's a character named Jill who's a trauma survivor, and her arc is handled with sensitivity, and Clive's relationship with his brother Joshua is the emotional core. It's about sacrifice and what you're willing to destroy to save the people you love. The ending is Shakespearean tragedy mixed with epic fantasy, and it left me sitting through the credits in silence, processing what I just experienced. You feel like you're controlling a prestige fantasy series, and the payoff is worth every minute. Cyberpunk 2077 with Phantom Liberty is CD Projekt Red's redemption arc, and it's one of the most stunning comebacks in gaming history. Yes, the launch was a disaster, but after 3 years of updates and the Phantom Liberty expansion, this is now the definitive Cyberpunk RPG. You're V, a mercenary dying from a malfunctioning brain implant, and the main story is about survival while getting pulled into corporate conspiracies and existential questions about identity. But Phantom Liberty is where the writing reaches another level. You're working as a sleeper agent for the new United States, and you meet Solomon Reed, played by Idris Elba, and he's not just a celebrity cameo, he's a fully realized character with his own arc, and the expansion is a spy thriller that rivals anything in film. The dialogue is razor sharp. There's a mission where you infiltrate a party with Johnny Silverhand living in your head, and the banter is some of the best writing in the game. Night City is the most detailed open world ever made. Every district feels distinct. Watson's crowded markets, Westbrook's corporate towers, Pacifica's abandoned construction, and the level of detail is obsessive. You can walk into random buildings and find entire stories told through environmental design alone. The ending branches are devastating. There are multiple conclusions, all bittersweet. The Phantom Liberty ending offers you a way out, but the cost is brutal. It's the kind of narrative choice that stays with you. You feel like you're living in a cyberpunk future that's beautiful and horrifying in equal measure, and the story earns every moment. Baldur's Gate 3 is Larian Studios making a game so ambitious it accidentally ruined every other RPG that came after it. This is a 100-hour Dungeons & Dragons campaign where your choices shape everything. Not in the fake illusion of choice way, in the this NPC can die in Act 1 and an entirely different character fills their role in Act 3 way. The reactivity is insane. You can talk your way out of boss fights. You can kill quest givers and the game adapts. You can romance companions, betray them, or ignore them entirely, and each path is fully written. The companion arcs are masterclass character writing. Shadowheart is a cleric with memory loss hiding a dark secret. Astarion is a vampire spawn using charm to mask severe trauma. Karlach is a tiefling barbarian who's literally on fire and just wants to hug someone. Every companion has a full multi-act story that can end in redemption, tragedy, or something in between depending on your choices. There's a moment in Act 2 involving Shadowheart and a decision about her goddess that's one of the best moral dilemmas in gaming. There's a romance scene with Astarion that's more emotionally mature than most prestige dramas. And the final act in Baldur's Gate brings every decision you made crashing together in ways that feel earned, not scripted. You feel like you're part of a D&D campaign with the world's best dungeon master, and the production value is AAA. You'll play this multiple times and see completely different stories. God of War Ragnarok is Santa Monica making a game about fatherhood, destiny, and breaking cycles, and somehow making all three themes hit with equal weight. The father-son dynamic between Kratos and Atreus has evolved. Atreus is a teenager now, questioning everything, pushing boundaries, trying to figure out who he is outside of his father's shadow, and Kratos is trying to be a good dad while also being a literal god with a violent past he can't escape. There's a mission in Asgard where you play as Atreus alone, making choices without Kratos there to guide you, and it's when you realize the game trusts you to understand that rebellion isn't just teenage angst, it's necessary growth. The combat refinement is absurd. You're switching between the Leviathan axe and the Blades of Chaos mid-combo, freezing enemies then igniting them, and it feels like conducting an orchestra of violence. The Thor fight in the opening is one of the best tutorial bosses ever. You're trading blows with the God of Thunder in your own front yard, and the DualSense makes every hit feel like a car crash. And the final boss ties together themes from both games in a way that's both epic and devastatingly personal. But the ending is what elevates this. The game is about breaking cycles, of violence, of prophecy, of gods failing their children, and that final hour delivers on that promise with a scene between Kratos and Atreus that made me put the controller down and just process what I'd witnessed. You feel like you're playing through the greatest Norse myth never written, and you're emotionally invested in every moment. The Last of Us Part 2 isn't just a sequel. It's Naughty Dog making the most controversial narrative gamble in AOA gaming and somehow pulling it off. This game does something no other game has attempted. It makes you play as the person who wronged you, and it forces you to understand them. You spend the first act as Ellie, hunting down the people responsible for a brutal opening that earns every ounce of your rage. Then the game switches perspectives, and you play as Abby for 10 hours, and you hate it at first. But then the writing does its job. You understand her motivations, her trauma, her humanity, and by the end, you're emotionally destroyed because there are no heroes here. Just broken people in an impossible world. The environmental storytelling is unmatched. There's a museum flashback with Ellie and Joel that's 2 hours of pure character building with zero combat, and it's some of the best content in the game. There's the flooded subway station fight where human enemies and infected start attacking each other and you're using the chaos to survive. And there's the Rat King encounter, a grotesque fusion of infected that's one of the most horrifying boss fights in any game. The remastered version adds roguelike modes and visual upgrades, but the real reason this is worth full price is the 25-hour emotional devastation. You feel like you've lived through a war, and whether you love the story or hate it, you'll never forget it. Alright, that's the list. 20 games with stories so good they justify every dollar. Some of you are mad I didn't include your favorite. Some think I'm insane for putting Guardians of the Galaxy on here, and that's fine. This list is personal, but here's the thing. Every single one of these games gave me that feeling where the story took over, where I wasn't thinking about mechanics or graphics or whether it was worth $70. I was just absorbed in the narrative. That's what full price should feel like. Drop a comment. Which PS5 game has the best story you've ever experienced? Which one made you forget you were playing a game? And if your answer isn't on this list, that just means there's more greatness out there than one video can cover. If this helped you find your next story-driven obsession, hit subscribe. If it made you add 5 games to your backlog, and now your partner's giving you that look, hit the like button so I don't feel guilty alone. Next time, we're ranking the PS5 games with the best gameplay, because story isn't everything, and some games are just pure mechanical perfection. Until then, I'll be in the comments defending my Guardians of the Galaxy take.